we've done 2 recorded videos previously, one just introducing the project and then another one talking about our experiences reading Atlas Shrugged for the first time. And in that same vein, we want to talk tonight quickly about our experiences having taught the courses about Atlas Shrugged in the past and what we learned from it, and why this gave us the idea to do the Atlas project. So Greg, this was really your idea to begin with. Do you want to say a little bit more about where this began, what the genesis of it was in your experience as a teacher?
Yeah, well, I taught a course back when I was teaching at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, called Concepts of Human Nature. And actually it was a course that was on the books there that other people taught, and sometimes even other professors had included Atlas Shrugged in it. So I decided to do the course, or was offered an opportunity to, with an honors class, and we what we did is the theme of the course, as I taught it, was the role of reason in a man's life, which is the theme of Atlas Shrugged. And what we did is we had a lot of different readings, not only Atlas Shrugged, but since Atlas was the longest, we stretched it out over the course of the semester. And each class, the students were to have read one other chapter. Some days we didn't even talk about it. We talked about some other reading, but then we'd rejoin Atlas Shrugged a few chapters in. And what I found was it was just really interesting watching students read the book and discuss it over the course of the semester. They were all really engaged in it, more than in really almost anything else, I think anything else I've taught. They were the ones who agreed with it, the ones who didn't, the ones who were in the middle. They were just really captivated. It raised a lot of good discussion, and there was a feel of exploring this large-scale work and this universe together. And then that was years ago. Then I guess 2 years ago, was it? Ben, you were teaching a class on Atlas Shrugged at Loyola, where you were teaching at the time, and I came out to do a guest teach a session of it, and it was just so much fun. I thought we should bring this to a bigger group.
Yeah, it was neat when you showed up to my class. We actually had a meeting afterwards with some students, late night over pizza, discussing the book, and that was, it was shortly after that you convinced me that we needed to try to think about ways to take the show on the road somehow. And this is the equivalent of that in this day and age. Because when I taught it to my students at Loyola New Orleans, it was probably one of my favorite teaching experiences ever. I mean, first of all, it was so cool that I actually got to do the course in the first place. I was able to convince my university to let me do it, and I was pretty grateful that they let me do it. But it was fun to do, not just because it was teaching a book that I really liked, though that was a big part of it. It was also because it's this rare opportunity that you get to teach philosophy through the medium of fiction. Most philosophers didn't ever write any fiction to dramatize or concretize or illustrate their ideas, to give a chance to see how they would work out in real life. And Rand did. And this has really fantastic pedagogical advantages. Normally in a philosophy class, you will read nonfiction treatises, and students have a hard time motivating themselves to get through all of those. It's dry, it can be boring, but philosophy really comes to life on the pages of Atlas Shrugged. And all of the major questions in Western philosophy are in one way or another raised, and in certain ways perhaps answered, at least from Rand's perspective, in this work. It's especially fun, I think, because it's a mystery story. And because it's a mystery story, if students haven't read the book going in, they don't know how it's going to end. And so you get to ask them questions like, what do you think is going to happen next? And what do you think this character is trying to do? What do you think they're after? Why are they doing this? And they make predictions, and you get to test it against, your own knowledge of what's really going to happen. And it's revealing, helps you remember a little bit what it was like to read it for the first time. But it's also a mystery insofar as the students don't, what I discovered, what was surprising, was that the students don't know what Rand's views actually are. And so it's a mystery to figure out what her views are going to be, what views are going to be revealed and unveiled as the plot moves forward. There's all these And I think, Greg, you've had some experience with that kind of issue in your teaching as well.
What I noticed was that the students thought they knew what her views were. Some of them because they'd read the book before, and many of them because they just heard what was out in the culture about her. And when you think you know someone's view, this is true of a fiction writer and what a novelist's stance on the action in her novel is, and it's true of treatise writers also. When you think you know someone's view, there's a tendency to kind of read everything they say through what you think they're going to say or through what you think they hold. And it's real work not to do that, to just look at what's on the page, to learn what you can from it, to let the story develop, and when it's relevant, let the ideas develop. And that's something I really want us to push people to do in this course, to take the novel at its face value, to understand what's happening in it, just to be looking at the passages in context. I'll give you an example. Often, when we were reading the first chapter, I asked the students a question about what Jim Taggart, who's a character we meet in that chapter, motivations are in a given scene. And I got people, and some of them were people who'd read the novel before, some just knew about Rand. Well, he's saying this because he's a socialist. I say, well, but he doesn't say anything about socialism. It's not clear to me. It's not clear to me whether he's a socialist or not. Anyway, and I've read this novel a lot of times, but it's pretty clear that in this scene he doesn't mention socialism. And what those students were doing is they were taking their sense of what Rand's about. She doesn't like socialism, and this guy's a villain, so that's got to be what's moving him. And we want to, I think, all of us, and this includes especially people who are really familiar with Rand's philosophy, and people who might think they are and be less than they think, but even those who are really familiar, to look in each scene and each part and say, well, what's really going on here? And I've learned a lot by doing that. I've written a bunch of essays on Atlas Shrugged, where I was interested in figuring out what new is being learned or revealed in each scene. And you learn a lot when you look at the novel that way, and I hope we'll have occasion to do that.
Yeah, good. So first, can you hear me, Greg, since we were having an audio issue? Okay, good. Yeah, so I wanted to start to wrap things up because we're running out of time. But especially because of the fact that one of the things that we're the most interested in as teachers is just what I was talking about, the experience of getting to work with students who are reading these books for the first time and getting to see what it's like for the mystery to be unveiled for them. I want to do more in this discussion group online to encourage participation of first-time readers. And if they're first-time readers, that means they haven't read anything yet, several weeks before we actually start reading. So one of the things I'm going to do tonight, and if you're watching now, stay tuned, is post a question asking, who among you are first-time readers? What are your preconceptions about the book? What are you expecting to find? And otherwise, why did you decide to join the Atlas Project? And I think it'll be interesting to get some interaction going on between the first-time readers and the rest of us. And so those of you who are not first-time readers and who have read it before, please be careful. Again, remember one of the cardinal rules, the first rule of the Atlas Project is thou shalt not talk about spoilers, because of course finding out how the mystery is solved is one of the most pleasurable parts of reading this book. So, Greg,
the way we're understanding that is each week, we'll be up to a different chapter, and we're going to post very clearly in the group where we're up to. So the idea is just don't talk about anything ahead of where we are. So my counter shows that we are a little more than halfway through the time we're allowed to be on here. I think we've covered the stuff we want to cover. But Ben, have you noticed if anybody's viewing us online? My friend Brian is, I know, because he's.
There are people, but I thought it might be fun to see if there was anybody in the last few minutes who is online who wanted to, ask any questions.
That's what I was about to suggest.
If somebody wants to write something into the comments section, and we'll see if we can answer it. There's only about 20 people who've been watching. We didn't announce this in advance on purpose, so I don't know how many are still there. But if you're there and you want to ask a question or make a comment, now's your chance.
You comment on our decor. Ben has a map. I've got an Aristotle and an Atlas Shrugged cover. We've had some good comments on our audio. We're experimenting with the software, and as I switch shots, I'm running the shot switching. I have to.
I think we met Apton. We met Abton at Ocon, didn't we?
Apton?
Yeah, the fellow in the comments section
So
who
I
was talking
can't,
about
man,
the
I can't
audio.
see the comments from where I am. You can see
Right.
them.
And Abton says he'll be rereading the book, wants to know if there's a good approach to reading it to get the most out of it.
Well, we're going to have a lot of questions that are meant to help you do that. But if you're rereading it, let me suggest something. This now applies to rereaders. One thing you can do is, because it's a mystery story, you are privy to the thoughts of some characters, but not others. Right? That's how all mystery stories work. If you were privy to everyone's thoughts, you'd know what was going on. But if you've read it before, you know about the context of some of the characters who you're not getting their internal monologue as you read it. So one fun and interesting thing to do on a second or third read through Atlas or any mystery book is to try to read it from the perspective of the characters whose side of it you couldn't understand the first time through. If there's a conversation between two people, think, what's it like for the guy who the narrator's not letting you in on the thoughts of? And I think particularly with Atlas, you learn a lot by thinking through the novel that way. This is an idea. Shoshana Milgram gave a talk once on ways to teach Atlas and techniques for reading it, and this was something I took away from that, and it was, I think, a really good point. Another is, if you have a sense of the beats of the novel from reading it in the past, or you have a sense of where these characters are going, what kind of trajectory they're on, you can think about why they're not where they're going yet in different scenes. So if you think, eventually I know so-and-so is going to hold this view or act this way, how is he or she different from it here? He's not like he was at the very beginning of the book, but he's not like he's at the end. And if you can fill in those steps, it really helps you understand in more resolution how the book's working. So those are two things for second-time reads.
5 times before I did that, and I was missing a lot because of it, I think. We have another question from Al Jakira, and we have about 4.5 minutes left to do this. Al asks, will there be an opportunity to discuss a chapter after its discussion week has passed?
Yeah, the discussion can continue online on Facebook after... Oh, so you're allowed to keep discussing things as long as you like.
Yeah, so the discussion questions will be posted, and they'll be posted indefinitely. It's just that newer questions will pop up on top of them. But if you want to dig down and look at the older questions, you're free to discuss those there. And depending upon the setup that we use, you may be free to just start a new post about those. So that's yet to be determined.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out how to moderate the post so that it's not too much. You're not flooded with more information than you want, but you can get as much as you want. And we'll experiment with that. But yeah,
and maybe you want to say something
to continue. Oh, sorry, Ben.
Maybe you want to say something about the supplemental sessions that we're thinking about?
Good point. So we're committed as part of this, and we have a schedule of doing a session a week on the novel, on each chapter. But we're happy to also occasionally go live separate from that for a shorter period of time, a half hour here, an hour there, whatever it might be, on topics that there's continued interest in. So there are themes that are running throughout several chapters, and it might be that people want to discuss some of the political issues of the novel more than feels suitable in the context of discussing each chapter, or the romances, or whatever it might be. And when we notice there's interest in those things, we'll have sessions on them if people want to do them. So tell us what you want. Tell us now in advance, and tell us at the time. More on sex or whatever it might be, and we'll try to make it happen.
Well, we'll try to make the discussion about it happen at least.
That's what I mean by on.
Anything else is up to you. We have 2.5 minutes left. So anybody else want to ask any questions or make any comments about the Atlas project? Looks like nothing else. So Greg, do you have anything else you want to wrap up with?
Yeah, one thing we might say is we're really excited by how many people are on the Facebook group. We're over 1,000 now. I forget what the latest count is. It's also really exciting that people are interested in setting up local groups. We're trying to get a couple organized in the New York, or we're trying to get some stuff organized in the New York area. And what I'm hoping is that most of the time, instead of just being alone in my living room doing this, for my side of it, I'll be with a group, maybe different groups each week, of people in New York, hopefully some of them students, talking about it live, so they'll be in on the discussion. It won't just be the two of us as talking heads. Other people in other cities have expressed interest in creating groups that might meet to watch the broadcast or might meet to discuss the chapter before or after the broadcast. We'd love to see that happen. If anyone watching or listening is interested in starting a group or being in one, speak up in the Atlas Project Facebook group, and we'll try to connect you with other people. Also, Ben, there's the email alerts list you want to make sure everyone remembers.
Yeah, if you go to the Facebook group, at the very top, pinned to the timeline, is the group description. Now, that contains a number of useful items of information, including ground rules for discussion, a link to the course plan, which has a schedule of everything we're going to be doing, and also a link to a form where you can sign up to join the email list. And that's something that's going to be useful for you. First of all, because it's, we'll send copies of the discussion questions to you in advance there, in addition to posting them to the Facebook group. We'll post reminders about upcoming live sessions. And also it gives you the opportunity to tell us where you are, so that if you want, and so there's a way of opting into this, if you want, we can pair you up with other people in your area who are also interested in being paired up with people, so that we can maybe start to plant the seeds for some of these live discussion groups. And Greg, it looks like we have about 30 seconds left, so we should probably just sign off.
Just want to sign off. Thanks everyone for listening now and in the future. And we're experimenting with our technology here, so this will get better as we go. Thanks for bearing with us.
Thanks everyone. Talk to you sometime probably next week.